I guess I probably didn't mention it in the last episode. Maybe it hadn't happened yet. But my mom has a friend who's like a feng shui master, I guess. And she messaged him like, okay, so my daughter has 2 bedrooms in her apartment. One faces this direction, the other faces this other direction. Which bedroom should she sleep in? And he was like, okay, the one that's facing this direction, if she sleeps there, she will attract married men, and it will affect how she views romantic relationships negatively. If she sleeps in the other bedroom, she's going to have better outcomes overall, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, move that shit right now. Like, he didn't even see the floor plan, hasn't seen my apartment, wasn't given any context. And literally like a week before this information, I was like, I had a coffee with a guy that seemed like it was under business pretense, and then it became like social, and then he's married and has 2 kids and invited me for a walk along the river, an evening walk around the river. I was like, bruh, I literally replied like, I don't want to hang out near mosquito water. Like, oh my God, there's literally nobody more emotionally available than a married guy. So yeah, I was thinking about that and just like, let's move everything right now. So, maybe in the next 3 months my life is going to change, because apparently that's how long it takes for like feng shui changes to kick in. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. I feel like so drained at the moment. I don't know what's going on. This year, the vibe is so off. I don't even know how to describe it. I've been saying this for like the last 6 months, which is so lame, but I don't know. Maybe the tides are turning. Anytime I feel like overwhelmed or confused about life, I do a tarot spread, and then I ask DeepSeek to help me interpret it. And then another thing I've been thinking about recently, which I guess I should do like some kind of video on, is the role of a woman's ego in dating. Recent Wizard Liz cheating scandals, etc. All this talk about women's empowerment content and like the scam of self-improvement for women has been interesting, because it is something that I have thought about a lot and considered when it comes to the content that I make. Like, I try to make a point about, this is not dating content. I'm not giving you advice on how to get a boyfriend. But by integrating some of the principles or the things that I talk about, you might end up in better general relationship situations, whether that's in work, family, friendships, or romance. It's definitely not about like figuring out how to get a boyfriend, in my opinion. It's like decentering men in the sense that you don't hate men. You just, acknowledge and accept them for who they are, and then you act accordingly, and you learn to prioritize your needs and your interests as well, and defining what those things are separate to what you think men want, how to be desirable to men, what society demands from you. It doesn't mean that you have to ostracize yourself from society or you can't find a healthy middle ground, but becoming aware of this spectrum is the first step, in my opinion, in being able to decide where on it you sit. There are some parts of patriarchy that I'm not interested in participating in. There are other parts of patriarchy that I will, work with to my benefit to a degree, and then I have my own limit that I am not willing to compromise at any given moment, and this is an ever-changing approach, and just, being mindful about how you move and how you do things, and in being intentional, I think is important above all else, rather than thinking there's like some hard cut definition for how things are in order to basically try to like circumvent having to engage critically with your life and your decision making. I think a lot of dating advice and like female empowerment quote unquote advice, or like male hating adjacent decentering male content, is like low-key absolutist in the way that it says like men are this way, so therefore this and that, you look for these red flags and then this and that, and the underlying sort of approach is like, if you do these things, it's like a shortcut to having to actually like be vulnerable or having to actually exercise discernment in your relationships, or you will be able to avoid pain if you avoid people that do this or do that. But you could be in a perfectly healthy relationship and still get your heart broken. You know what I mean? So I think to me, it's more about how do you deal with heartbreak? How do you deal with overwhelming emotions? How do you accept certain traumas that you've experienced and like live in a way that isn't just reactive to those traumas? And that's not like an easy thing to do, but I think that it's definitely skills worth having and developing. You know what I mean? And one of my friends is like dating this guy. She started dating a guy who's unemployed. Okay, that's like the first L that she took. I think when you're out of your 20s, out of your early 20s, you should not be dating unemployed people. Especially men, but, or at least like not in a way where you need to take it seriously. And the thing in this situation is like, I think her ego really got the best of her because she has a job and she's busy, and this guy is like tall and handsome but unemployed because he got like a payout from the previous job that he worked at when they went bankrupt or whatever. And then I guess she's also gone through a glow up recently, so a part of her is like, okay, yeah, I'm dating a hot guy because I'm hot, which I love for her. But then she's like, yeah, I don't want it to be serious with him. You know, I told him I don't want a relationship, it's just for fun, but they do relationship things. I'm like, okay, the gray area is getting gray. And she would kind of like speak down about him, like, oh, she's so much better than him because he has a job, or he's not good enough because he doesn't have a job, and kind of like be a little bit mean about him behind his back. And I guess like she asked him if he's read any books recently, and he was like, I haven't read a book like as an adult at all. And I guess she side-eyed him or whatever. And then at one point, excuse the construction in the background, at one point I guess she caught him like talking to another girl or something and maybe lying about it. And she has, oh my God, she has like a bit of trauma around her ex cheating on her and like lying about talking to other girls. And she put her foot down and was like, okay, we can't see each other anymore. Like, you lied. I can't deal with this. This is like too much for me. Broke up in quotation marks. And then, you know, she's sad about it. She gets approached by some old rich guy. No idea what the status of that is right now. And then she just said that, you know, she's still confused about this whole situation. And he's being really nice to her. He admitted that he was wrong. He was dumb. And I guess wants to keep seeing her, and she wants to keep seeing him to some degree. And she realized, like, yeah, you know, I guess it wouldn't be nice if someone that you're dating would kind of look down on you for not having a job, or was mean to you about it, or kind of like belittling. And, you know, you just, there's nothing, it's not about like who is better or worse than someone, but it's about how you conceptualize and view the power dynamic in your relationship. Because the thing is like, if you think that you're too good for someone, that stops being true as soon as you make yourself available to them. You know what I mean? And especially in a dating context, and especially if you're being physically intimate. Like, if you're physically intimate with someone, especially a man, like, that is validation for them that you're on the same level. Like, no matter how much of a bum he might be objectively and how hot you might be objectively, you are the same. You are equals as soon as you are intimate with them, you know, as soon as you give your time and energy and attention to that person. So maybe you were quote unquote better than him before and your ego got off on that. But as soon as you start spending time with him, now you're at risk, or now you are basically on the same level. And I think that that's kind of like what shook her, because she thought that, oh, she's better than this guy, so she doesn't care. And it's not that deep for her. But he still betrayed her, you know, in her eyes, and he still disappointed her, and it didn't save her from the potential for heartbreak just because she wasn't taking it seriously, or the potential for her ego to be bruised because she wasn't taking it seriously, which is why I think you need to take shit seriously. You know, like, I don't see the point in dating unless it's going to be serious, because there's time and energy dedicated to making yourself available to someone and prioritizing them. And when you don't set like hard boundaries and definitions for your romantic relationships, that's when you start opening yourself up to miscommunication. Because why would a guy take you seriously if you don't want to take him seriously? You know what I mean? Like, and if he ever got the indication that she looked down on him, even if it was just subconscious, why would he feel like he needs to be loyal to her, or he needs to be honest with her? You know what I mean? Like, and this is where the woman's ego, it creates such a huge blind spot for women. I remember one time I told my ex-friend, I was like, yeah, the reason why I don't date and the reason why I don't go back and forth after a breakup is because it has less to do with that person and more to do with me and my ego looking for like a power grab. You know, like, you want to be able to attract someone. You want to feel like the power that comes with being able to attract people, and also knowing that you can reject them. And like, that's such a toxic thing to do. Like, I recognize that capacity within myself. So, and I don't think it's worth it. You know, I don't get anything out of being able to reject men just for the sake of it. It's not like I get paid for it. If I was getting paid, that'd be a different story. But even then, it's like not worth it. That's such like a low place to put yourself in. And she thought I was crazy, or like judged me for that. And I was like, you don't even see that in yourself. And like, you can deal with the consequences of that ignorance later, which she eventually did. You know, I heard about the way that she was moving, trying to chase different dudes that were also jobless or just out of jail. And it was like, yeah, you think it's going to be easier because you think that they're beneath you, but now you're associated with that, and that's how people will see you, which is against your sort of like end goals for how you're perceived by others. So yeah, the ego is really important for women to get in check, because we often only talk about a man's ego. You know, a man's ego is fragile, this and that, especially in women's empowerment content. It's all about how men are doing things wrong. But I also try to make sure that my content is more about women being able to take accountability. It's not that it's your fault if you've been hurt or if you've been betrayed, but it's about how are you accountable for how you move forward, okay, and how you acknowledge the role that you played, even if the role that you played in it was being